Okay, so now we will begin to talk about the structure of the brain. So this is a brain that's in cross section. So you cut it in half and then you look at one of the halves from the medial view. Okay, so the first thing to see, things we already talked about, is this cerebrum up here. So you can imagine this would be the forebrain, the front lobe. Then the central sulcus doesn't go all the way to the bottom on this side. Parietal lobe, occipital lobe here, separate from parietal lobe by parietal occipital sulcus. And we said that in this region you don't have precentral postcentral gyrus. It's just a region called the paracentral lobule. The cingulate gyrus runs here, just around this structure here called the corpus callosum. The corpus callosum are a bundle of axons that connect the left and right hemispheres of the brain. So the two halves of the brain communicate with each other via the corpus callosum. Next, you see something here coming from the corpus callosum down. It doesn't really come from the corpus callosum, but it seems like that. It is called the pharynx. F-O-R-N-I-X, pharynx. Above the pharynx here, between corpus callosum and pharynx, is a septum called septum pellucidum. It separates the lateral ventricles of the brain. We'll talk about the ventricles later. Next, we see here the cerebellum. Cerebellum is also here in cross section. If you look here in the center, there's like a little circle here. That is the intermediate mass. The purpose of the intermediate mass is to connect the left and right thalamus together. We'll see the thalamus later. The thalamus is located in this area. However, because of the way the brain is cut, we do not see the thalamus here. But you can imagine the thalamus sits in this area. Then below the thalamus, this area here, this is the hypothalamus. Okay, so you have the thalamus in this region, the hypothalamus below. From the hypothalamus comes a structure called the infundibulum. It's like a little stack, S-T-A-L-K, stack. And to that infundibulum attaches the pituitary gland. We will see the pituitary gland another time. So you have thalamus, hypothalamus, infundibulum, and then there will be a pituitary gland attached to that infundibulum. Then over here you see a little circle. That is the anterior commissure. Anterior commissure. I don't think you can read that, but there's an anterior commissure here and a posterior commissure on the posterior side. So anterior, posterior. This is the front, this is the back. Anterior commissure, posterior commissure. Below the posterior commissure is a little gland. It's called the pineal gland. Okay, so there's the pineal gland. So next we will go down and we see there's a little canal here. This is called the cerebral aqueduct. The cerebrospinal fluid that's produced within the lateral ventricles will drain into this area. So again, I forgot to mention here, the thalamus resides in this region. But because we removed the thalamus is not here, you see it's an empty space here. This is the third ventricle. So the lateral ventricles are on two sides of the septum pellucidum. Then from there the cerebrospinal fluid drains into the third ventricle, which is between the two thalamus. From the third ventricle, the cerebrospinal fluid drains into the cerebral aqueduct. The cerebral aqueduct is located within the midbrain. So this area here is the midbrain. The midbrain, so you can see one clear feature of the midbrain are these two bumps here, the superior and inferior colliculi.